Hi everyone, welcome back, and thank you for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's get started. Two police officers, dressed in blue uniforms, pulled up to my garage in a patrol car. I watched them quietly from under the lift, wiping the grease off my hands while trying to read their expressions. It seemed unusual to see officers looking so cheerful, but as they walked toward me, their faces turned serious. After confirming who I was, they gave me troubling news. Something had happened to my wife, Kate. She was in the hospital, but they couldn't share any details. I instinctively moved to leave, but they stopped me and started asking where I had been for the past 3 hours. I told them I'd been at the garage all day and suggested they check with my mechanics, Mike and Pete. I admitted that I had stepped out briefly around 11 a.m. to grab coffee for the team. One of the officers asked Mike and Pete some questions while the other wrote down the name of the coffee shop I visited. Then he asked to see my truck. Without hesitation, I led him outside. He carefully examined the vehicle and finally let me leave for the hospital. When I arrived, my heart was racing. A staff member explained Kate's condition, the heavy blood loss, the emergency surgery, and the transfusions. My concern grew deeper when I noticed the doctor's strange half-smile while delivering the bad news. It felt unprofessional, even inappropriate. As I was leaving, the same two officers approached me again with more questions. We sat in the hospital cafeteria, sipping coffee as they started asking about my marriage. I told them Kate and I had been married for 8 years. She had been a successful attorney and had always wanted kids, but waited until she felt secure in her career. Just a month ago, she had quit her job to take a break before planning a pregnancy, one final bit of freedom before motherhood. Then came a question that caught me off guard. "What can you tell us about John Bart?" I frowned. "I don't know anyone by that name." They exchanged looks but didn't explain. They simply walked away. I trusted my team to close up the garage for the night and drove home, only to find forensic experts and a detective searching through the house. The detective introduced himself and gave me a summary of what they knew so far. He repeated the same questions the officers had asked earlier, but added one more. "There are a few drops of blood in the downstairs bathroom. Any idea how they got there?" I shook my head. "No idea." Then I looked him straight in the eye. "Are you treating me as a suspect?" He sighed and gave a vague reply. "We're following several leads. My colleague is currently speaking with Mrs. Barton." That name hit me, John Barton. "Who is John Barton?" I asked the detective. He hesitated, then apologized. "I can't reveal that." After they left, confusion weighed heavily on me. I went upstairs to the bedroom, staring at the room as if seeing it for the first time. That morning, around 10 a.m. at work, my thoughts had wandered, thoughts of closeness, of reconnecting. They say men think about intimacy an average of 67 times per waking hour. After nearly a month of no physical connection, I was definitely above that average. Kate's sudden lack of interest had been obvious: mood swings, tiredness, disinterest. I blamed it on her adjusting to life after work and the pressure of soon becoming a mother. I hadn't pushed her. I knew everything was about to change for her, and fear was understandable. But that morning, I wanted to bring back the passion, the spontaneity. I told Mike and Pete I'd be out for a bit and planned to surprise Kate at home. Before leaving, Pete asked me to test drive a car he had just finished working on. I agreed, took a short drive, and then headed home. But the excitement disappeared the moment I saw an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway, a visitor. Frustration bubbled up, but I stayed hopeful. Maybe it was just a friend. Maybe they wouldn't stay long. I stepped inside and called out Kate's name, no reply. Then I heard it. A sound no husband should ever have to hear. My whole body turned cold, every hair on edge. The unmistakable sounds of intimacy floated down from our bedroom. My hand instinctively went to my phone. At the garage, I always recorded videos when clients brought in their cars, a precaution against false claims. That same habit kicked in. Heart pounding, I climbed the stairs, hit record, and slowly pushed the door open just enough to see Kate, with a man I didn't recognize in our bed. A wild, primal fury surged through me, but I forced myself to stop. I could have ended that man's life in seconds. Instead, I backed away. I collapsed against the hallway wall, breathless and shattered. They hadn't noticed me. They were completely lost in what they were doing. I didn't know how long I sat there, frozen by betrayal. Eventually, the sound stopped, replaced by quiet talking, just as painful to hear. I needed space. I needed time to think. Carefully, I went back downstairs and sank onto the sofa, away from the sights, the sounds, the smells, away from the pain of what I had just witnessed. My mind, sharp even in heartbreak, started forming a plan. Get him out first. Confront him. Kick him out naked if needed. Then face her. No violence. No evidence. Just swift, cold humiliation. I had the perfect tool for the situation. 2 years ago, while serving in the Army Reserve National Guard, I had been assigned to clear out old military vehicles. That's when I came across a stun grenade, a non-lethal device designed for hostage situations. It released a blinding flash, as bright as 8 million candles, and a deafening blast measuring 170 decibels. It could temporarily disable anyone nearby. I retrieved it from my workshop, made a quick modification by attaching a rope loop to it, and returned to the bedroom. This time, I didn't bother staying quiet. Moans continued to leak through the door. My hand tightened around the grenade as I stepped inside and tied the rope loop to the ceiling light fixture, letting the device dangle halfway to the floor. I pulled the pin, pocketed it, and stepped back, pressing my fingers over my ears and shutting my eyes tightly. Even with my eyelids closed, the flash was blinding. The shockwave rattled the house. As planned, I re-entered the room, ready to carry out my revenge. But the scene that met me made me freeze. The man was lying flat on his back, not moving. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, below his waist. Something was missing. Kate lay on the floor, her eyes empty, lips quivering as if gasping for air. I was completely stunned. This wasn't the outcome I had expected. Staggering into the hallway, I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Whatever had taken place in that room was worse than anything I could have imagined. Then came the screams, horrifying, gut-wrenching cries from the bedroom, followed by loud thuds and the sound of doors slamming. Reality hit me. I was in serious trouble. My plan had completely failed. Peeking back into the room, I saw the man roll out of bed, clutching his groin and howling in pain. Kate was gone, likely in the bathroom. I knew I had to remove any evidence. Rushing back into the bedroom, I scanned the area for anything that could tie me to the scene. I found the detonator and quickly secured it to the rope. Everything else had already been destroyed. Taking a deep breath, I cautiously approached the bathroom. Kate was on her knees, vomiting into the toilet. I felt nothing. No pity. No concern. I simply didn't care anymore. As I turned to leave, something on the floor caught my attention. I bent down and picked up a warm, soft chunk of flesh, the severed tip of a tongue. Without a second thought, I carried it downstairs and flushed it down the toilet. There was no way they'd be able to reattach it. Trying not to make a sound, I slipped quietly into the night. The distance between our house and the neighbors worked in my favor. Halfway to the garage, I emptied my pockets into a roadside trash can. 10 minutes later, I was back in my small, familiar garage. Breathing heavily, my thoughts racing, I called Pete and Mike, my grease-covered, loyal employees and trusted friends. They arrived quickly, alarmed by the urgency in my voice. Before they could speak, I asked if they'd be willing to vouch for me, say I'd been at the garage for the past 45 minutes. They immediately agreed. Of course, boss. But I raised a hand.
Wait.
Before you agree too quickly, hear me out. I warned them that what I had done was serious. Once they knew the truth, they might not want to get involved. I admitted I didn't even know what kind of charges I could be facing. Maybe jail time. I changed into my old overalls and wiped my hands and face with an oily rag, preparing for the inevitable police visit. Then I told them everything. Mike cracked first. He tried to stay serious for 15 seconds before bursting into uncontrollable laughter. That set Pete off, and soon the three of us were laughing like madmen. It took 5 full minutes for us to calm down. With firm handshakes and promises of loyalty, they returned to work. Over the next hour, bursts of spontaneous laughter echoed through the greasy halls of the garage. Kate was finally facing the consequences of her actions. That evening, I returned home and began cleaning the master bedroom. I scrubbed the bathroom floor, stripped the bed, and made a mental note to buy a new rug. The curtains were torn and would need replacing, too. I kept myself busy to avoid thinking, but the phone calls and constant knocking made it impossible. The media frenzy was relentless, a scandalous mix of cheating and a man losing his manhood. It was the perfect storm. I answered the door once, then turned off my phone completely. Finally, with silence around me, I sat down and allowed myself to reflect. Did I regret what I'd done? Strangely, no. I'd always despised cheaters. I had seen how betrayal could change people, twist them into someone unrecognizable. But what truly shocked me was Kate. I had believed she was just as committed as I was. Until recently, our physical relationship had been amazing. As I sat thinking, one clue kept playing in my mind. 2 months ago, Kate had said she was retiring to enjoy her last days of freedom. That statement had bothered me. I had assumed she'd work up until her 7th month of pregnancy. Something about her saying it was her one last celebration before kids felt wrong. Suddenly, my personal cell phone rang, a number not many people had. The caller ID showed it was Kate's parents. They lived 3 hours away, and I'd always had a good relationship with them. I answered. Her mother didn't waste time with greetings. Do you know why journalists are crowding her house? She paused. We're going to find out eventually, but... She hesitated again, struggling with her words. Did you watch the news? They're saying a cheating woman bit off her lover's dignity. I sighed. Yes, Mom. Look, there's no easy way to say this, so I'll get straight to it. The woman they're talking about is Kate. A scream exploded through the phone, followed by a harsh beep as the call ended. I stared at the screen, heart sinking. That's when I remembered something important. Earlier that morning, I had left my phone recording outside the bedroom door. The pain was still raw, but if I didn't try to understand why Kate had done what she did, I knew I'd never be able to trust another woman again. I risked becoming a bitter, lonely man, the kind who hates what he can't make sense of. So, desperate for answers, I hit play. I already knew what the video would show. I'd lived that moment. I closed my eyes and let the audio speak for itself. The phone had slipped to the floor and only captured a shot of the ceiling, but the voices were crystal clear. Kate, this past week has been amazing. Does it really have to end today? My offer still stands. Just say the word, and I'll divorce Sarah and marry you. There was a pause. Then Kate's voice replied, No, it wouldn't work. What kind of start is that? A marriage with a guy who left his wife and kids? I love Dave too much to hurt him like that. Really? You love him that much? Because he's not the one lying next to you right now. Silence. Then, you're wrong. I love him completely. The moment I met him, I knew he was my soulmate. I want nothing more than to die in his arms, surrounded by our grandchildren. A scoff, followed by, Then why are you here with me? Kate hesitated. Then came the truth. I just miss the past. I was kind of wild before I met Dave. I miss walking into a bar and feeling wanted. The thrill of leading someone on, then deciding if they get what they want or not. Lately, Dave's been off deer hunting every other weekend. 3 weekends ago, I went to a bar, just for old time's sake. One night turned into 2. Then last Saturday, I ran into you. And here we are. I stopped the recording. The problem wasn't me. I had been a good husband, a good lover. She was just cold and selfish. The days that followed were filled with a quiet, constant disappointment. 2 days later, the reporters finally cleared off our street. The hospital administrator called, saying Kate needed pajamas. I ignored the message. She could deal with those thin, embarrassing gowns herself. A couple more days passed, and her father called. He apologized for Kate's actions and asked if I'd consider staying in touch with the family. Then, in an attempt to smooth things over, he mentioned that his other daughter was recently divorced. Sorry, Dad. Not interested. Meanwhile, the guy, Mr. Not So Big Deal, made the news again. He'd been released from the hospital, but the Real story came out shortly after. Reporters had done their homework and exposed him as a serial cheater. The cherry on top? Though doctors had successfully sewn his manhood back together, they concluded it would likely never function properly again. A poetic kind of justice. By the end of that week, I had an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Barton, or Sarah, as she insisted I call her, showed up at my door. A pretty woman with sad eyes. She said she'd heard rumors that I might have evidence to help with her divorce. I didn't confirm or deny anything. I explained that sharing the footage would mean implicating myself. She understood, apologized for asking. I reassured her there was already enough circumstantial evidence to win her case, but if things took a turn, she could come back. Maybe then, I'd reconsider. There was something about her sadness that struck a chord. I felt sorry for her. So I pulled up the video file and showed her only the aftermath, the screaming, the chaos. She flinched, but quickly regained her composure. Let's just say that by the time she left, sadness wasn't the emotion on her face anymore. And since I'm such a helpful guy, I told her she could always come back if she ever needed a pick-me-up. That wouldn't be the last time I saw Sarah Barton. But the strangest visitor came on Saturday. It was the detective I had spoken to after the incident. Gone was the suit and badge. Now he wore jeans and a simple shirt. Hey, son. No, I won't come in. Just wanted to let you know, with the lack of evidence, I recommended closing the case. I thanked him, but as he turned to leave, he paused, then glanced back at me. Listen, I'm retiring at the end of the year. If I come back after that, will you tell me how you did it? I just smiled. Have a good day, detective. Then came Kate's letter. It arrived the following Tuesday. My dear Dave, I can't express how ashamed and sorry I am for what I did to you. I understand why you haven't visited me, and I forgive you. Unconditionally. I never truly considered the full consequences of my actions. I certainly never imagined my parents would disown me. I know I've lost your love, your trust, and your respect, maybe forever. That truth hurts more than I can describe. I understand if you never want to speak to me again. But if it helps your healing, I'd like to explain why I did what I did. Just know that it was entirely my fault. The doctors say I may never speak normally again. Apparently, when I bit down, I swallowed part of my tongue. They're considering an experimental procedure to try and restore function, some kind of stretching technique. I hope it works. At the very least, I need something to distract me from the dull, loveless, childless future I now face. Take whatever you want in the divorce. I'll sign anything. Just if you could keep me on your health insurance a little longer, I'd be forever grateful. Farewell, my love. I wish you nothing but happiness. I hope I haven't completely ruined your life. Your Kate, aka your cheating wife. The letter was so touching, I actually reversed my previous decision and sent her some pajamas. Now, where the hell are Mick and Pete's numbers? Do I owe them a beer? Or a whole damn keg?